Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new edition of Let's Talk About Education with Antonio Corrales. As you may know, I'm an educator, an entrepreneur, and a professor at the University of Houston Clear Lake. My main goal is to introduce you to pioneers in the field of education and to let you know about topics that you may not be aware of, but you may be interested in. Today, we have the honor to have with us Niki Spears, somebody who has revolutionized the world of school climate with her energy bus for schools. Thank you so much for being with us today, Niki.
Thank you for having me, Antonio.
It's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun.
All right, Nikki. So, why don't you let the audience know a little bit about yourself? How do you get where you are in your career? How was that process?
Okay. Well, thank you again for having me.
Absolutely.
I started out as a pre-K teacher with Head Start about 20 years ago, and that's where my passion for education really evolved.
Okay.
And so, as I worked as a pre-K teacher, I went back to school and was able to get my degree in early childhood education, and worked over the past, I'd say 20 years in several realms of education. I've worked as a behavior specialist, I've worked as a curriculum coordinator, principal, assistant principal, you name it, I've done it in education. So that's that's really how my career has evolved.
How do you get to where you are right now?
Yeah.
Now, you and I know that research tells us that there is a direct connection between school climate and academic performance. We have seen that over and over again. And now, when we talk about school climate for the audience to understand, we're talking about the quality and character of school life. Basically, patterns of students, patterns of schools and personnel, experience of school life in general. Talking about norms, goals, values. Why are you so passionate about school climate? Where did that come from?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because I think about that all the time. I think about culture, and I think it started for me when I was a little girl. People may assume that, they may think that, culture and climate really happens and takes place when we go to work. But it really takes place first in your home and growing up. And so as a little girl, we had a lot of communication breakdown in our family, which caused some conflict, and relationships weren't as strong as they needed to be. So as a little girl, I would look at my parents, I would look at my siblings, and I would take that on. I would say, well, how can I make our family better? What can I do to make everybody happy? And, as I grew older, I realized that it wasn't about me changing people. It was more about me changing myself. And so when I was able to go into my Head Start classroom, which was my first classroom, I saw that as my family. And it was one of these classrooms that now I could, create my culture, the one I longed for as a little girl. And so I walked into this classroom and I gave students a voice. I gave parents a voice. But not only that, we start to align our values, just like you talked about at the beginning, our values, our beliefs, who we were, what we expected in our family. And so I've taken that belief into every role I've assumed, and I found that that's really what has helped me be successful over the years. It's the relationship, and how we connect with people.
And it's interesting that you say, because a lot of people have that misperception that relationships and feeling good in your work environment or feeling good at your household just is a cliche more than something scientifically proved that makes a
Yeah.
difference in your performance. So it's interesting that you mentioned that for you embracing since the beginning of your career.
Yeah.
Understanding that my performance and the performance of my teachers, my students, my staff's going to depend on how good they feel where they work.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And we miss that a lot. I mean, we focus on the end results rather than the process of how we get there.
Exactly. Now, when we look at the things that teachers and administrators should know about school climate. Um, what are the things that you, in your opinion, or you can recommend them to do to positively influence school climate in their schools? In other words, what would you tell them? You know, an administrator, a teacher that is looking at us right now. What steps would you recommend them to take to improve their school climate in their schools?
That's a great question. I think you really have to know yourself. You have to know what some of your strengths are, and then know some of your weaknesses or opportunities, and allow people around you to help with those opportunities that you may have for yourself.
Okay.
So it's really about looking, diving deep into who we are as a leader, and then understanding that we don't change culture from the outside in, it's really from the inside out. And so examining, even if you don't see the culture that you want right now, then you know that you have to be strong and you have to be dedicated to really model the behavior you want to see. And John Gordon has this thing that he says something like, your positivity has to be greater than anyone else's negativity. And I usually take that with me everywhere I go. So when I go into schools and I can feel culture and climate, and if it's negative, I smile even harder, or I get really excited because I know that our energy transfers to others. And so it's really about taking a look at yourself and just being just being dedicated to the end result and not giving up.
Now, I'm glad that you touched that point about the energy bus, because I know that you have revolutionized schools by adapting the energy bus for schools. For our viewers out there who haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. Josh Gordon,
Yes.
author of Energy Bus for School, and you adapted that book to schools.
Mm-hmm.
And can you let us know, in general, how did that process occur, and what does the energy boost for school from Niki Spears look like, especially in environments that people may think that they may not change. You may have sometimes some administrators, some teachers say, well, this is my personality, and I don't know if I can be a cheerleader. I don't know if I can be an energy boss. Can people change, Niki?
Oh yes, but you first have to have the desire to change. When we first, launched the Energy Bus for Schools leadership journey, John and I had a vision that aligned. His vision was he wanted his book, The Energy Bus, to impact schools. And my vision was I wanted to impact culture in schools all over the country. And so getting together with him and looking at this framework of how we could bring the Energy Bus into schools, we really helped leaders take a look at their culture first and to decide what are those things that I want for my school. Because when I go out and I talk to leaders, a lot of times they may not know their mission statement. They don't know their vision statement. And so what the Energy Bus for Schools and the Energy Bus, the book, does is it talks about the importance of knowing your mission and knowing your vision. Because we get upset when we have what we call energy vampires, and that's a term used in the book.
Yeah.
And, we get upset when we have them on our campus. But if we don't communicate who we are and what we're about, how can people determine if they're on the right bus or not? And so when you're constantly focused on your mission and vision, and this is who we are, these are the principles we embrace, then people can say, you know what, I'm not about all this positivity. Or they can say, you know what, this is the bus I want to be on. I'm going in the right direction. This is the school for me.
That's awesome. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
So if somebody is out there and is watching this video and they say, I like what Niki is saying, I feel that my school could do better in school climate, and what are the steps? Let's say that they contact you. What are the steps that you, in general, you take from them once they contact you? How does that work?
Usually I'm contacted by a principal or a superintendent.
Okay.
And I always want to connect with a principal because it always starts at the top, okay? And if they contact me, we would do a brief interview. I would tell them a lot about our journey, but I'd also want to know about their school.
Right.
You know, I want to know about them as a principal.
You're collecting data.
I
about
collect
them.
data,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, because I want to know, is this going to add value to your campus, first of all? Are you passionate about culture? Do you see the alignment with, or the relationship with culture and student learning?
Correct.
Because if you don't have a leader who is passionate and believes in that,
Correct.
it's not going to work.
Or at least believe that change can occur.
Exactly, exactly. So most of the people who contact me, they're already aware of John's book, and they want to bring it into their schools, you know. So we would go through an interview, and then I would give them the steps. And the first step would be for us to do an onboarding, which I meet with their leadership team virtually, and we talk about what the first year on the energy bus is going to look like. We plan a big reveal, and so that's a celebration for their staff, because it's all about mindset, and it's also about getting people pumped up and excited about taking this journey with us. We're about to take a journey that's not only going to change your school, but it's going to impact your life. And that's what's so different about this. It's not just changing schools and changing students and classrooms. It's about changing you personally.
As an individual.
Yes.
And I think that's a great point, because when I read the book, and I think I told you about that, it really made a difference in me. And it is hard when you're in education. You have read so many books. You have, you have been exposed to so many programs that you become a little cynical.
Yes.
And then the book really touched me, because, as you're saying, it's about changing yourself.
Right.
And changing the way that you perceive. Like in the book, for those who haven't read it, and I don't want to throw any spoiler alerts in there, but it's really about the story of an individual who also is struggling his personal life,
Right.
and his professional life. And so you can see how the methodology may allow him to improve in both areas.
Exactly.
You know, and become a better person.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
so after we do the onboarding, principals are invited to attend one of our tours that's taking place across the country, and we do a leadership session with principals where we take them through what I talked about, mission and vision planning. So it's like a strategic planning session with our leaders, so that they learn what they need to do at their level to create and sustain positive culture.
So they can see the whole
They
big
can see
picture,
the
yeah.
whole picture, because there are certain things that leaders need to know prior to jumping on board. So we have tours set up across the country. And then the last thing we do is schedule a training with their staff.
Okay.
And we come out and we do a training, or we could do it virtually. It all depends on budget. But we come out and we train their staff over the 7 principles. I'll tell you, Antonio, the feedback that we've gotten from our trainings, some people say, you know, this is the best training I've been to. This has changed my life. And I believe it's because teachers are able to self-reflect in our trainings, whereas most of the time when they go into professional development, it's all about, you need to go take this to your classroom, you need to do this with your students. Well, we give them a chance to reflect on themselves and where they want to be in their personal
And
lives.
that's a huge difference, because you're exactly right. A lot of people are tired of the traditional professional development.
Yeah.
Where basically you receive a pile of information, you try to digest it, and then you're on your own, you know, trying
Exactly.
to. So I really like that approach, that you have a follow-up system.
Yes, as long as they're on the journey with us, they become part of this family.
Correct.
And so we have principal partners that lead different cohorts, so they're constantly supported. So not only do I support them, we have chief relationship officers, we have chief principal partners, and so it becomes this family of support. And what's so cool about the journey is that we're all like-minded. You don't get a whole lot of negativity.
Exactly.
It's all these people who are
The
passionate
vampire,
and positive, right? We don't
the
get the
vampires
energy
are-
vampires.
Yeah, they're out. Yeah.
Yes.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, what about parents and students who are out there? They're listening to us right now. They say, "Well, you know, I'm at a school that not necessarily had the best school climate. How do you feel that they can contribute to impact school climate in their schools? You
Yeah,
know, when they're outsiders, when
Yeah.
it could be harder.
Well, during the process of going through the onboarding session, we plan a parent session.
Okay.
And what we do with leaders is we can share information with them to share with parents.
Correct.
Sometimes I've been asked to be like on a Skype or FaceTime with parents just to say hi and give them an overview of what the energy bus is about.
Okay.
But I would much rather that come from the leader, because it shows that I adopted this model, and this is something I'm passionate about, rather than bringing in an outsider.
Correct.
So it's so important that parents understand what's going on, because the kids are going to come home talking about things that they may have no knowledge of. If a kid comes in and they say, you know, I'm being the driver of my bus, I'm like, are you driving buses in your school? What are they doing at that school, you know? And so it's important that parents understand, what are these principles our kids are learning, and how can we apply these in our home? Not only that, I think it's so important that parents learn to apply the principles as well.
Absolutely.
Because they need to understand that it's a partnership with the school. The school is not solely responsible for educating students. And some parents believe that once I drop my kids off, they're your responsibility.
Correct.
Well, no, it's a partnership. And so being the driver of your bus talks about taking 100% responsibility.
That is fantastic. Now, what about, so you have that parental involvement component there, that is really important. Now, I remember last time you and I talked, you mentioned that you were starting to do the energy bus for schools for students. That you have that project that you were kind of cooking in there because you saw some lights in there you may be applying. How's that going on right now?
That's going really well. It's still a startup kind of thing, but my vision for that was to host student workshops.
Okay.
And so what we want to do is give people the opportunity to allow students to dive deeper into these principles. And so I've done.
And we're talking about students of all ages.
Oh,
right?
students from K through 12.
Okay.
And I recently, I was in Arkansas for a full week, because we have several schools in Arkansas, and I visited a campus where we were taking them through Create a Positive Vision. And so I had a little girl, and her vision, her goal was that she wanted to sing in front of people. And so as we were going through the process of how we do this and how we create goals and how we, go back and we reflect, I said, so what is your timeline? When do you want to accomplish this? And she wrote down, today. And so during that session, I said, boys and girls, get ready, because she's about to accomplish her goal right here today. And her voice was beautiful. And the whole class, they clapped for her. It was just, it just made you really emotional.
And what a great way to combat bullying.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. And so when we talk about, we don't really address bullying, because what I've learned as a principal and being in this role is, as soon as you say the word bullying,
you have a negative.
It's negative, and plus kids tend to use it more.
Exactly.
And they're like, he stepped on my toe, he's bullying me. I'm like, no, baby, that's not bullying. So what we teach is kindness.
Okay.
And so if we reinforce kindness and being positive,
That's really interesting.
you're not going to have all the
So
the
changing
bullying.
the word bullying for kindness.
Yes, changing the approach.
That is fun. Now, what are the? Can you mention one example of a school that you, without naming the school per se, but a case that you thought, wow, their energy is really low, and you experience a tremendous change in the whole educational community. You have an example for our viewers?
I do. It was one school that this person attended one of our sessions, our leadership sessions in North Carolina, and her school was failing. Like, they were on the verge of closing their school. And she just came on this year, last year, 2017. And this principal embraced the principles from the book. Yes. And so she was joy. She turned into joy. And her staff really embraced the idea. And so that it was contagious in her community. So when the state came in to assess her campus just a few months later, they named Energy Bus as one of the things that they saw that helped to take them off of that list, that failing list.
Wow.
And so they're doing great things, and I'm going to go out there and celebrate with them next week. I believe I'm going to be out there. And so that's just one of our success stories.
One of the success stories.
Yeah.
Now, to kind of finalize the interview, what recommendation can you give to the educators out there who are watching the video right now, and administrators, teachers, even parents who may be seeing you students right now, and they say, you know what, uh, this makes sense to me. You know, changing the school climate may make sense to me. What do you recommend them to do? What are the steps that you recommend them to do to start changing the whole situation?
And changing their culture.
Yeah.
I think again it depends on, I think, doing an assessment of where they are first, and maybe doing some quick little survey to see where they are currently and what the perception is of the climate. Because sometimes people can, you can go into a school and you may perceive something as negative, and then somebody else may perceive it's positive. But the biggest thing is just coming together to align your values. These principles that we have in the Energy Bus, it's really nothing new. It's success principles that have been studied for years.
Correct.
John has just done a creative job of putting this in like a story type of format where it is really appealing to the reader.
Correct.
But these are things that we should already know. These are things that we should be living by, that we need to kind of remind ourselves that we need to take 100% responsibility.
Yeah.
We need to set goals for ourselves and have a positive vision, a positive outlook on life. And so I guess looking at your mission and vision statement first to see if that's something you truly embrace.
Yeah.
And then what are going to be those guiding principles for you that you can all embrace, and so that you teach those to everybody in your community. And that means your students. Your students should know your mission. Your students should know those values. Your teachers, your parents, and even community members when they come in, that should be the first thing they say, see, this is who we are, So that's where I would start.
That's fantastic. Well, I want to thank you one more time, Niki, for being
thank
here
you.
today. Our viewers, thank you so much for being with us. Please know that at the end of the video, you're going to have my information. If you want to contact me to ask any questions to Niki, or if you want to contact Niki, we're also going to have the information there. Please stay tuned with us, and see you next time.
All right. Thank you.